Hi everyone, and welcome to this MoCRA webinar focusing on roles in the supply chain. I'm Kamal from Worldover. I'm a cosmetics regulatory manager. I've worked in the industry for over 7 years now across various actors in the supply chain, so manufacturer, retailer, e-commerce. So I'm really excited to be here with you today and bring you the webinar focusing on roles in the supply chain. And today we will be focusing on the role of facility under MoCRA, as I'm sure most of you will have questions on whether you actually qualify as a facility or not and exactly what you need to do. If you have any questions, please add them into the chat and I can answer those at the end. Okay, so let's go back to what the actual definition is of a facility within MoCRA. So a facility within MoCRA includes any establishment, including the establishment of an importer, that manufactures or processes cosmetic products distributed in the United States. So I think what is really key here is that it includes establishments within the US and also those that are outside of the US and importing in. And it focuses on establishments that manufacture or process cosmetics. So we need to try and understand what is actually meant by that. So who is a manufacturer? And we're going to take it all the way back to, I guess, the last update to US cosmetic regulations. So all the way back to 1938. So the Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act, which defines what the manufacture of a cosmetic product is. And that is the making of any cosmetic product by chemical, physical, biological or other procedures, including manipulation, sampling, testing, or control procedures applied to the product. So if you meet the definition of doing one of those activities, you are likely to be seen as a manufacturer that processes cosmetic products under MoCRA as well. So any facility that produces the bulk formulation and or maybe also manipulates the bulk formulation, so a facility that is manufacturing the bulk but then sends it to another facility to fill that bulk into packaging, both of those facilities will actually be classed as facilities under MoCRA and be required to register on the FDA portal. The easiest way to think about it is, are you touching the bulk or not of the formulation? If you are, then you are likely to be viewed as a facility under MoCRA and you'll need to register. If you are not, then it's unlikely that you will be treated as a facility. There are some very specific activities that are listed within MoCRA, which if you do complete any of these activities, you are not a facility. So these are shown on the screen here. So if you label or relabel, you're not a facility. If you pack or repack and it doesn't manipulate the bulk formulation, so you don't touch the bulk formulation at all, you are not a facility. If you are holding product or distributing product, you are not a facility. And we'll go through a few worked examples of where these roles fit in the supply chain towards the end of the webinar. There's also quite an extensive list of other examples which are not facilities. So these include beauty shops and salons, cosmetic product retailers, so that includes direct sellers and individual sales representatives, hospitals, physicians' offices and healthcare clinics, public health agencies and other not-for-profit entities, entities that provide complementary cosmetics incidental to other services, so think hotels and airlines where they will provide you with usually small samples of products as part of your stay or as part of your journey on an aircraft. Trade shows where samples are given free of charge. An establishment which produces cosmetic products solely for the use in research or evaluation, so including product testing, and these samples that are used for product testing and evaluation are not offered for retail sale. And if you are a facility who only manufactures drug or OTC products, you are not a facility under MoCRA, because MoCRA focuses on cosmetic manufacturing only. So the list is quite extensive as to when you are not a facility. MoCRA doesn't give such specific guidance for if you are, apart from the manufacturing and processing points that we've gone over already. So what about if you're not actually based in the US? What are your obligations? If you're a non-US based facility and you produce cosmetic products that are sold on the US market, you do still have obligations under MoCRA, and you will be treated as a foreign facility by the FDA. If you do meet those definitions and you definitely are a facility under MoCRA, you do need to work with a domestic US agent to help complete the facility registration. That's really key. That's the only activity where you need a domestic US agent to help with that facility registration. And most importantly, and will probably impact quite a lot of decisions if you are a non-US based facility, is by registering on the MoCRA portal, FDA Cosmetics Direct, and obviously manufacturing products which are made for sale on the US market, you are putting yourself in basically in the scope of FDA's inspection and enforcement. So if you do register, the FDA can inspect you, they can check that you are meeting your requirements under MoCRA. So it's really key here to ensure that you are meeting what is required under MoCRA, even as a non-US based facility. Okay, so what are your obligations as a facility? What do you actually need to do if you have gone through, obviously, the past few minutes of this webinar and you're fairly certain that you do meet the definition? So the first thing that you need to do is obtain an FEI number, and that is the FDA Establishment Identifier. This is something that you can do today. So you don't need to wait until the FDA Cosmetics Direct portal opens. The FEI scheme runs under a separate area of the FDA website, and we will share a link with you in the article that will follow this webinar as to how you can obtain or search to see if you actually already have one. You might find that historically, for whatever reason, your company has set up an FDA FEI number, and you can search the portal to see if you have one before registering to get one. Once you have that number, you are then ready to complete the facility registration within FDA Cosmetics Direct. And there's a number of things that do need to be included in that facility registration. So obviously the facility name, a physical address, an email address of a contact person, and a phone number. And then you move on to what you're actually producing. So you need to include all of the brand names which the facility manufactures or processes. And you also need to include the product categories of each cosmetic product manufactured or processed at the facility. So for each of those brand names, you need to assign a product category to the types of products that are being manufactured and processed. Those product categories will be available within FDA Cosmetics Direct. And there has been some guidance published, which we can also link to, which has a draft list of those product categories as well. Along with that information on the categories, you do need to also include the responsible person of each cosmetic product manufactured or processed at the facility. So these 3 bullet points are really important, and they are things that you can get started on now. Organising which brands you produce for, reaching out to the brands and finding out who that responsible person is under MoCRA, not the UK or EU, it must be the US responsible person, and which types of products are manufactured or processed. You should already be familiar with that. It's just a case of matching it up to a product category. If you have all of that work done before the portal opens, it will just be a case of copying and pasting the information once the portal does open. Once you've completed that initial facility registration, you then have an ongoing obligation to renew that registration biennially. So every 2 years, you need to be going back into the FDA portal, making sure that list is up to date, adding any new brand names on, removing any brand names, making sure the contact information is correct, the address is correct. So these will be ongoing obligations. So just to summarize, I guess the 1, 2, 3 approach is obtain your FEI, complete your facility registration, renew it every 2 years. Okay, so we've got a couple of worked examples here as to what would class as a facility and what would fall out of the definition of a facility. So a formulation that is manufactured by supplier 1, that's definitely a facility because they are producing the bulk. The formulation is then sent to supplier 2 to be packaged. So the bulk formulation is going into perhaps a bottle. The entity doing that activity would also class as a facility because they are touching the bulk of the formulation. Once that formulation is in the bottle, it is then sent to supplier 3 and they add the label to the product. That is not a facility because all they're doing is labeling or relabeling. That relabel product is then sent to a storage warehouse where it is just being held. That again is not a facility. So hopefully this shows exactly what could class as a facility and what would fall out of the scope of a facility. Golden rule is if you touch the bulk, you're very likely to be seen as a facility. We have another example. So this is where a formulation is manufactured and packaged by supplier 1. So they produce the bulk, they pop it into the bottles. That is definitely a facility under MoCRA. The packaged formulation is then sent to supplier 2 to be relabeled. We've already seen this example, that is not a facility. Any relabeling activities by an entity does not qualify them as a facility. That relabeled product is then sent to an Amazon warehouse. That again is not a facility because the Amazon warehouse is just holding the product. I think it's also really key to note here that if the supplier 2, for example, so the supplier that's relabeling, if they also complete other activities such as manufacturing cosmetics, such as packing cosmetics from the bulk formulation into bottles, they would still class as a facility, but for the purposes of this example, they would not. So it's really important to map out your supply chain, which supplier is doing what, and identifying who is a facility and who is not, because they will need to be looking to obtain an FEI number, obviously complete the facility registration and maintain that going forwards. And if you are a brand, you need to ensure that you have that FEI number from your manufacturer to ensure that you are then able to complete your product listings. And you also need to have that ongoing conversation if you are a brand with your manufacturer to ensure that they are entering the right information onto the FDA Cosmetics Direct portal, making sure the category of the cosmetic product is correct, the responsible person information is correct. So the communication is really key at this stage whilst we're waiting for the portal to open. That brings me to the end of this webinar focusing on facilities. I did want to share a little update with you all today as well. So at the time of recording this webinar, so the 8th of November, we've just heard from the FDA this afternoon in the UK, so morning US time, that the FDA is not planning on enforcing the facility registration requirement or the product listing requirement for another 6 months from the original deadline of the 29th of December 2023. That doesn't mean that deadline doesn't apply. The FDA have come and said that the portal should be open before that original deadline of the 29th of December 2023, but they understand that it does not give industry much time to actually upload all of their product listings on there, all of the facility registrations, so they won't actually be doing any enforcement until the 1st of July 2024. So hopefully everyone can breathe a bit of a sigh of relief over the Christmas period, now that we have a little bit more time to get everything completed, and whilst we're waiting for the portal to be released. Not directly, I guess, related to this specific webinar where we're just focusing on the facility, but it's a key update that I'm sure you will all find useful. So I'm not sure if there's any questions in the poll, in the chat. I will just have a quick look. So there are no questions, but I'm happy to wait for a few seconds to see if anything comes through. But if not, I will obviously leave you with this webinar. If you do have any questions, please reach out to us at Worldover. We'll be more than happy to help. And if you need help with mapping out your supply chain, who needs to actually do what, we can help with that as well. Thank you very much. I don't see any questions. Janelle, I think you can stop the recording.